is simply reflecting unprocessed emotion or what is in my thought. Thoughts that obviously, if I'm getting cancer, there's something missing that I have not fully processed. And I'm like, and I believe that the body heals itself, and I believe in Ayurveda, and I believe in natural things. So when, of course, I'm presented with radiation and chemotherapy and hormone. So I have a sister who's a medical doctor. You have to, because that's the protocol. It's like ham and cheese, they say. If you have surgery, you have to have radiation. If I don't have a philosophy of life, I have no clue what I believe. I don't know what my spirit is saying in that triad. So that's why we start Ayurveda with Sankhya, with the Shadashan, that you're given all 6, but we really focus on that. But if you do not have a philosophy of life, how are you going to make the hardest decisions when they come in your life? And that is the part of the stool that knocks people off their game. Did I have a perfectly great... No, of course I had bad days and questioned, and I have kids. But really, the mental stability or the spiritual stability was rooted in I knew that I had a philosophy of life. So you ask your client, what is your philosophy of life? Of course, as you progress, the first session you're not going to do that, But it has to start with you. What are your beliefs? If you were given a diagnosis of some terminal illness, where would you go? What would you believe in? And then most importantly, are you living that currently? Is your action supporting that? I remember Diana said one day that she wakes up every morning to do the Agnihotra, and you don't want to, you fight it. But in that action, you are honoring your philosophy. It's still a fight. It doesn't mean it ever gets easier. But if that's the truth, then that's my action is in alignment with my soul, and I do it. I'll bitch about it, I'll complain about it, I'll tell the class that I don't like it, I'm tired, I want to sleep. But I get up and I do it. And that is the difference. So when we really want to be a healthy spirit, we have to look at those things. What am I doing that supports what I say I want to be a representative of in my life? So really look at the philosophy of life that you live by. And going back to that movie, what you do and who you're with and what you eat and what you say is the true philosophy, not the one you put on the paper that you want to believe. Because we all know that we're an Atman, that we're a spark of God, that we all know that because we're here for a reason, because we have that belief system. But how the hell do we get there? That's what we don't know. That's why we suffer. That's why we have pain. That's why we have pains. So the first thing is, if you don't have you don't have for your pillar, your spiritual pillar, a philosophy of which to live by, then your first assignment is to find it. Who has here a philosophy of life that they live by? That they know that they can really define? That's okay. So question that. Look at that. And don't judge it. Do not judge it. I often will say that people that are like alcoholics, they go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and then the people that go to Al-Anon, they're the ones going because they're enablers. The alcoholic is more honest. I live based on a six-pack. They're living it. It's the Al-Anon people that are sicker. Because they're there trying to figure out how to not to enable the sick person. They are sicker than the alcoholic who says, living their truth, I drink. So it's right, but the people that are healthy are the sicker person than the one who's actually doing the behavior. The one who believes that the drink is going to cure their ailments, at least they're doing it, they're living, they're saying. But think in your life, where do you preach something, and you know that you're being a hypocrite? That is your illness. That is the weakness of this. It's so important because we have to constantly go back there and look back there and look back there. That is the one thing, if you take away from this class, is that. Where is this not flowing? And go to that and be honest with yourself. And write yourself a philosophy of life. If it's Sankhya, if it's Kabbalah, if it's yoga, That's all that these are. Astrology is. What was that?
Sanatan Dharma.
So Sanatan Dharma. Whatever it is, have that philosophy of life. And you know what the greatest thing is, people? That you can read all these books and pick and choose. I like this from yoga. I like this from Sanatan Dharma. I like this from Vedanta.
Right.
And make it your own. Which is a lot of people are struggling with because they don't know that they're allowed to pick and choose.
Yes.
So you can introduce your clients to this. Because they I really believe this philosophy. Or, oh, and you know, paganism, we honor the moon. I love that. Great! But write that down. Give yourself, maybe for next September start, I'll put that as a homework. Write your philosophy of life. So that you know the rules of living. What are the rules for you to live your life? Because then when something hits that's hard, we collapse. Because we don't know what our rules of living are. Start a rule book for yourself. I tell that to all of my clients. Start a rule book. What are your rules of your own life? And then don't betray them. No matter what. Ashley lived a lot of my cancer with me. And every day, my sister, my husband. Radiation, the doctor called me a moron. But when you are grounded in your philosophy, you know, that's your truth, living your truth. And then everything else follows. So this triad is constantly speaking down to the level of the cell. We'll get to that in a second with the qualities. So there's two concepts. One is Adi, and one is Vyadi. Oh, and if you think that anyone has that going on, that's a big fat lie. Okay, just so you know, because we are so easily impressed with people. Oh my God, they got it all going on.
I literally don't think it's even possible in the state of the world that we're in. I don't think it's possible. I don't believe it's possible.
Because every single one of us is trying to become that child of God, the all or nothing, which is exactly right. Because you're everything, but you're nothing. If you look at the universe, it's everything and nothing. We want to believe that, because that's really what we are, and we'll talk about that when we get to the online. But we're all in progress. We're incarnate people. We're in this. This is a jail. Okay? And so, agree. That's why when you're like, doesn't mean that there aren't spiritual teachers. It doesn't mean that there aren't people that haven't shown and are ahead of the path, of course. But if you keep that in mind, that nobody has got that going on 100% that's in a physical form, you can release yourself of this expectation that you hold yourself up to. Everybody is a work in progress.
Absolutely, that's why
All
we're
of us.
here.
That's exactly why we're here. If we hadn't figured out, we wouldn't have this.
Right.
So two concepts. One is Adi, and the other is Vyadi. So Adi is when we're having emotional or psychological issues that remain in the mind. They have not reached a physical component yet. Where Vyadi is when the emotions and the psyche, all of that has already affected the body. So you will have people that come with you, come from emotional. I had a client the other day who came for worrying. Her whole issue was worrying. It had not reached a physical component. It had not disturbed her sleep yet. She didn't have any sort of headache. She didn't have any sort of skin thing. It was purely worry. Okay? So you'll have, depending on how your practice goes, different situations.
So what is Adi?
Okay. Adi is when you have emotional and psychological disturbance. It's still in the emotions and the psychology. And it has not gotten to the body yet. Whereas Vyadi is when it's in the body. And what do we know is that eventually any sort of psychological or emotional disturbance will eventually turn into Vyadi and reach the body. We know this. Okay, so that is understood.
Adi has not reached the body yet.
Adi has not reached the body. Once we've reached the body, then it's termed Vyadi. So this is when we start seeing the skin disorders or the migraines. But if we understand these terms, we understand that every single thing has to do with the mind. It's all related mentally, even the fungus on the big toe.
How so?
How so with the toe?
Yes, with the fungus on the
Oh, well, I was saying before, if you think of it that the big toe represents like standing, the stability, and then the toe being space, and then maybe I need more space, I need a place. Let's say an example, this just pops into my mind. A person has a fungus on the big toe, which she didn't say, I said. And you think of the function of the foot or the big toe. It's one of like the stabilizing toes. So there's a person there that is lacking stability. If you look at it, it's the ether toe, it's the space toe, they might need more space. Maybe they just got bought over, their company just got bought over by a conglomerate, and they were all shoved into little cubbies where before they used to have a nice corner office. All of a sudden I went camping with my kid, I stepped in something where my feet got wet because it was raining like crazy, and Monday morning I developed a fungus in the toe. Me, the way I practice, because I practice from this concept, is that's related to those issues. What is the function of the foot? What is the function of the big toe? Of course, the more you learn and so forth. You have many different ways to tackle it.
I have an example, and I'm glad you brought it up. The person that I know that, as a matter of fact, it was yesterday.
Okay.
About the fungus on the toe. This person has actually physical stability, neuromuscular problems.
That's amazing.
And now she blames it on a pedicure that they cut the nail too short.
And there will always be something in the external environment that we can blame it on. Always. That's manas. We'll get to that. Always.
I think that also has to do with like Western, I don't know, theory, philosophy, I guess, because we're trained to like think, oh, you know, outside causes is usually what
Everything. If we are a microcosm of the universe, every single thing that's happening is inside. We have all of those elements inside of us. So yes, it might be the pedicure, but what pedicure disturbance do you have in your body?
Right.
You have to see it from both. Always.
And that's why I literally said that it's impossible in this day and age to accomplish that. Because if you look at the external world that we are living in, the time that we're living in, the external is mirroring what's inside. We can't oppose what's going on outside. Like we can, to an extent we can, but
when you learn to control the mind and know what the tool is for, you can. Are you going to do that in one lifetime? No. Absolutely not. But in this little lifetime that you've been given, our job is to get a little closer to that. Eventually we will come to a lifetime where we do transcend that. But all we're doing with our spiritual practice is trying to get a little closer.
Right.
That's it. This is a tiny little piece of all the karma and all the lifetimes and all the lessons that we have to learn. When I do astrology, you can see in the chart, whether it's Jyotish or whatever astrological system you use, and we'll get to that when we talk about the Chitta, you can see exactly the karma that you came to work on in this life. It's going to be the issue that pervades your lifetime. You will be fighting with that part of you for the rest of your life. Don't look for anything else. You bring the person back. And in every place in your life, whatever it is that is faltering in that mind, body, spirit triad, that theme, you had that same theme 20 years ago. You had it 30 years ago. You will have it 20 years from now. Maybe a little less because you've learned some practices. Maybe bigger because you've ignored it. But that's what you came to work in this lifetime. So if we look at it like, oh my God, I can never achieve it all. Absolutely. But did we come with the tools to achieve what we were told at the Spirit? If we quiet our mind enough to listen to it, absolutely. I used to think this was my life. That was it. The ignorance, I still have a ton of ignorance, but the ignorance I had before, oh my God, I would used to tell my husband, I'm not coming back. This is my last lifetime. And I would pray to God and say, this is it. Give it to me. I can't even handle the little that he gave me. You think that he can give me every single thing that I have to overcome to become enlightened? Please. That was the best thing that I ever did, was understand that. Whew, wow. I just left a burden. So if you understand it's just that little piece, that's enough. That drives us crazy. That's our little baggage of crap that we all carry around. If that's enough, why do I want 10 more bags? When I understood that, the relief that I gave myself was like, ooh, okay, I'll come back and do it again. And then I'll get another little baggage. There's this book, the Living Enlightened book. I recommend it. If you like to read something spiritual daily, but you don't have much of a spiritual practice in reading spiritual literature, this is a really good book. And he's funny. And sometimes when I'm in a hurry or I have a client early in the morning, I'll just open a page and just read one thing. And then it's kind of like something I think about for the day. And he's got a bunch of little stories, little anecdotes, and they're cute. And I'll share those sometimes with clients. And of course, when I read something, of course, it's related for me, it's related to the client that's coming. And he has a little story of this man who goes up to him and he's like, Guru, I'm so sick and tired of these problems that I have. And Guru's like, okay, take any one of these garbage bags that are filled with problems. Leave yours and take someone else's. So the guy goes home and takes someone else's garbage bag. And the next day he comes and he throws it. He's like, where's mine? Where's mine? Give me mine back. The problems we have, we make love to, we know, we embrace them, we dress them up, we perfume them. We love our problems because every single one of us in this room knows the answer. We know the answer to that paper. Define it. If you give that to your client, they're going to go mother, teacher, friend, sister, da, da, da. But every single one of us knows at the conscious level the right answer. But our actions are demonstrating that we're so attached to that bag of crap that we go around town with it. So our whole point, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with a philosopher, his name is Gurdjieff. He writes a philosophy called the Fourth Way. And so he talks about the way of the fakir, the like Christians that used to beat themselves when they had sin. He talks of the way of the yogi. Well, he says that every single one of us should learn to live like that in the world. That the meditation and the peace and the joy and the bliss should be amongst the world. And that's what our era is about. Yes, you can go to an ashram for a certain amount of time. You can go live in the mountains in the Himalayas. But your real job, and there's a shaman man who also writes a lot about this, Carlo Catanera, he talks about the Don Joaquin way or something like that. He also writes. Both of those philosophers, Carlo Catanera is more modern, Gurdjieff is older. They talk about how that is supposed to be done in our day-to-day. It's not about hiding out in an ashram or hiding out in a monastery. That this is the classroom, this fourth way is the classroom, our world is the classroom. And if we we can maintain calmness and stillness when someone just crashed our car, or they gave us a diagnosis, or our kid, we found out he's on drugs, then we're practicing the spiritual part of what we preach.
Absolutely.
So perfection isn't the goal, but mastering the mind is the goal. And so anything that takes us to master it just a little bit more is ultimately the goal. But when you get a client that comes with a physical ailment, what I said before, ask yourself, or you can even ask the client to see what's in their brain, in their mind. What is the function of this organ? When someone comes with a skin illness, what is the function of the skin? Protection. To protect. That person does not feel protected somewhere in their life, probably from childhood. I think it was Maritza or Ashley that was talking about the girl that came last week that had some sort of thing from childhood, and you were like, I think it was you or you that were like, oh, that started in childhood, and saw how it related to her current diabetes. If you train yourself to think, just the simple question, what is the function of that organ, you can start seeing. Now, Western world focuses a lot on the adi, on the emotional and psychological, and so it's like a psychological problem. We'll look at that and the steps of the mind and all of that. But ultimately, any disease is manifesting in the body. And we're going to learn there's 3 types of bodies. Already a psychological or emotional disturbance is already affecting the causal and the subtle or astral body. So it may not have reached the physical, but it's already a disturbance in the triad. So that body, if we redefine, hopefully by the end of this class, what the body is defined as, every single illness is affecting the body. Whether or not it has affected the physical, because we know that we're more than just the physical body, which is one of the differences of the Western world, where they don't have these concepts or believe in these concepts. If it hasn't shown up, and even sometimes as it has, what if they termed it fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue? Mm-hmm. Everybody has that, or adrenal fatigue. Those are the 3 that they don't know what to do with. Everybody in the world has that. Because they can't conceive that there's something more. But our understanding of the body is going to be so different that we're going to understand that it's not the physical. It's already affected the causal. It's already affected the astral body. Therefore, it's a body that's been affected. So everything is the body. But these terms are used in Ayurveda. So what is the body? What do we define as the body when we talk about the mind, body, spirit?
Physical, palpable.
Right. It's the physical, palpable. We think of the elements. It is actually the definition, if you think of it from the mental perspective, it is the gross form of the mind. So if that becomes your definition of the physical body, that means that the whole existence of the body, the whole purpose of the body exists so that the mind can act. You were given this entire instrument so this other instrument can act through it. Who's in control? The mind. The mind. Always. And no, we are in the body, but we are not of the body. Jesus said that. Okay? We are of the body, but we're in the body, but we are not of the body. Because if we go back to Sankhya philosophy, and I go back to that because that's the overriding philosophy of Ayurveda, but whichever one you find, that's the beauty of philosophies or religious beliefs. They all have the same truths. So it doesn't matter who you preach, it doesn't matter who you read, it doesn't matter who you quote. Every single philosophy, because the truth is the truth is the truth. And so if the Sankhya philosophy says that the actual manifestation, when we're talking about tamas, makes the Panchamahabhutas, we know that this is not what we are because we're Purusha. So when we are obsessed with this, and what did we notice in the malas with the hair and the nails? It's waste, and we spend all this money on it. Mm-hmm. There you see where the person's mind is. So if you see someone overly obsessed with their body, that they're in, that's their function, that's where their mind is. Oh, this is me. They are so far removed from the idea of spirit, of the namaste. How are you going to start throwing at them philosophies and concentration and meditate? They're never going to come back. So you have to meet the client where they're at. And if you pay attention that they're obsessed with the body in whatever they're saying or doing or showing you, then you know that you can only go one step beyond that. Okay. The mind. The definition of the mind in Ayurveda. Everyone got this? Manyate iti manaha. Manyate iti manaha. This means the one that creates realization. So when you guys were doing your little roller thing, you were creating the function of that tool based on your priorities, your perceptions, perhaps what you study in life, what you do for a living, who you care for. I learned that Maritza cooks. I never knew that. But I saw it in her description. And phyllo dough, I'm Turkish, so you hear phyllo dough, I'm like, oh man, where is this Hispanic? I mean, that's like... And so I went to my roots, and that's what we're constantly doing. So the mind creates your realization. So what you think is not truth. It's your truth. Right. It's your own individual, limited form of seeing the world, but it is not real. You think it's real. So what happens when you question your values, or you hear, right now, the politics? You've got Clinton and you've got Trump. Be in the room with someone, if you're a Clinton supporter that's talking about Trump, you're going to vomit, you're going to gag, you're going to want to go crash their car. I mean, the emotions that are going to rise from that, how dare they, are the ignorant. I mean, you're going to get heated in it. Because there is no possible way for you to see it from the other person's perspective. That is how enslaved we are to the mind and to the senses. And so your mind is constantly creating your reality, not the reality. Your reality. That is why in that triad, the spirit is so important. Because if you truly are living from a philosophy of life that's rooted in the truth, when your mind gets crazy, you can step back and go, wait a minute, let me revisit my philosophy. What does it say? Oh, everybody's good, and everybody this, and the truth is, and I have to have compassion. Whatever it is that your philosophy is. Oh, now I can calm down and see it from the other person's perspective. No, we can't. I'm not going to have you do it, but it would be good for you guys to sit in a different seat, just so you could see the classroom or the board from a different perspective. We even get attached to the freaking seat we sit in once a month. Oh my God!
We're preachers of heaven.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have two of these chairs in my consultation room, right? I sit here, and my client sits here. Oh my God! I don't know what it was one day. It was the computer, the plug. I don't know what it was. Oh! My phone had died. I do a lot of phone consultations, and my phone was dying. It was a phone consultation, and the phone plug doesn't fit to the thing from my chair. I was like this. I was pissed. I told my husband, this sucks. This battery, this phone, I mean everything, because the thought of thinking that I had to sit in the other chair So then, of course, I go into my Zen mode, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, what is this trying to tell me about my client? She needs to see something from a different perspective. She needs to shift her seat. And that's how I started the session. Because I understood that I was feeling, of course, everything that she was feeling, but I got so attached to sitting in my chair. And so just as an experiment tomorrow or after lunch, just sit in the chair and see how it feels. It's not going to feel right. Even if you take your own chair, the one you're sitting in, it's still going to be like, oh, this doesn't feel right. The light doesn't hit or it's too hot. We can imagine the attachment to just that tiny, tiny, tiny little chair. Then how much bigger change are we going to make? I mean, it's like football players. They have like these routines and they have to have a certain superstitions. We are constantly caught up in that, constantly. But, so that's the mind creating our reality. If I wear this jersey, my favorite team's going to win. That's my son. That's my son, Steven. And now with the dog. If the dog does a certain thing, then the Marlins win. And he's like, Dino knows everything. The dog has become like the octopus from the soccer again. That's the dog in my house. If Dino says or barks or whatever it is that he has decided is the superstition, the dog we've just had for 3 months. How did he survive the Marlins for 16 years before the dog? But we get attached. Imagine that, people. We get attached to this mind. So that's the reality that we're creating. But if we just shift a little bit, and if we have a philosophy, if we have our spirit really well anchored, then we have somewhere to go back to kick us in the head and say, wait a minute, I'm going off the deep end with this situation. But that's the anchoring of that spirit. So the one that creates reality, and we create reality through our senses and our mind. So the mind is known as Ubhaindriya. And you saw this in Sankhya philosophy when we were looking at Sattva. And it means that it is an organ of perception and an organ of action. You got it right?
I quite honestly, I didn't know it. I guessed it.
Yeah. Remember, it's the pretest.
I always get them.
That's the point. Now, if you guess it on the posters, then you need to tell us because we didn't teach you right.
Right.
Okay, the pretest, guess away. No problem. Okay, so it's an organ of perception, meaning that our senses has a lot to do with how we see the world or how we perceive the world. Our senses participate in creating our reality. And it's actually our biggest downfall. Okay? Because through the senses enter desire. And with desire, then we seek something. Okay? In the Gita, it talks about the cycle of the mind. And it starts with desire. How does desire enter?
The thought?
It's the thought of desire, but how does it actually enter?
Through the senses.
I love that. I mean, I'm looking at your pendant with those stones. I want to rip it off you. Like, I mean, the desire has been created since 9 o'clock. Like, so my eyes are like, ooh. And then what happens after we desire something? Now, we desire to say,
Then you take action
to try and get it. The desire is, and I think this was from Vedanta. I'll have to look in one of my things there. It says that it comes through any of the holes. So any hole you have, let's put that in perspective, okay, is a way where desire is entering. mean, we know sexually that that's a very common one, right? So any of the holes, so all of these orifices. So in the Gita, the cycle says the desire. So it enters through our senses, and then we want to go after it. What happens? One of two things can happen.
Do you get it or not get it?
If you get it, what happens?
Satisfied or unsatisfied?
You can never be satisfied.
Satisfied for a moment.
Because it's just a temporary satisfaction. And then, if you're not satisfied because you don't get it, same thing, then you go into a spiral of anger. And of course, there's suffering involved in that. And then you kind of lose the intellect. You get out of your rational mind. You get out of like the logic. And you spiral downward. And this is what we're constantly doing. I mean, do you know people that are constantly after another thing and another thing and another thing? It's constant. We cannot be satisfied if we are letting the mind and the senses rule us, give us our reality. We're enslaved to that. And I have to just tell you something in case you think that you're above this. You might be thinking to myself, because the best thing about the class is that we're not like that. Oh, I have a subject mind. Everybody. We're all psychic, right? It has nothing to do with going after the pendant or going after the car. Oh, but I drive a junk car. That means I'm better than, because we all do that. These are like the little disclaimers and values that we have. It could be after thought. It could be after knowledge, like acquisition of knowledge. It can be acquisition of anything. So don't think it's limited to the material. Because we know, again, going back to our philosophy, you always go back to the philosophy, you get your answers. If you go... Exactly. Doesn't matter what it is. I say that because that's my downfall. That's my attack. That's my Saturn, okay? So it's like, I want to learn. When is it enough? What need is that filling? There's something that you haven't met. There's something that you're not fulfilled with. That's the thing. That's why you always go back to that question. What need are you trying to fill with the acquisition of that? Like your chair. And we know if we go back to Sankhya that we come from Purusha. All it is a trickling down and gets denser and more dense and more dense and more dense. So if you stop at the thought, or if you stop at the acquisition of knowledge, of learning new things in the air element, why is it any different than the earth that I want more paper, that I want a chair, that I want a nice car? It's not. It's not. That's why having your philosophy of life to give you that stability of that third part of the stool is so important. So you can always go back and question your beliefs. That's why I put as the value statement, money is bad. A very common one. That one, I think everybody in the world, especially in our society, could question. So if we understand our philosophy, then we can go back and understand. Then we have an out. We have an understanding of what the tool is. And the dog doesn't have to break the screen. And you work at Home Depot and you know it even before you have to use it. But we want to understand how to use this thing. Okay? So that's where that triad, and I'll just keep going back and back to that. Okay? So we are enslaved to the senses, and it's all about perception. Okay? So we break at 11, right? I'm usually on that side and not on this side. Okay. So let's just do this one thing and then we'll take a break. So what do you see? What do you see in the first little square?
Old woman, young woman.
Okay. Who sees an old woman? Who sees a young woman?
I see young woman.
You see a Victorian profile.
Okay,
Old
young.
woman.
Okay, so that's the young woman.
That picture.
Okay. So try, if you see the young, try and find the old. If you see the old, try to find them. That's always what happens. Let me move. Right? If I move my seat, I'll see it in a different way. But look and see. Just try to think of it different. You find it, Paula?
Yes, I find one.
Wow. You found it? Did you find it, Leila?
I can't find the old one.
Okay. Do you have an old or a young?
I have the young.
Okay.
I can't find the old one.
Okay. We'll teach you how to find her because she's coming. Erica, you see her? You see them both? And Diana?
I don't.
Which one? You only see
I
the young
don't see the
one?
old one.
Okay.
I don't see the old one.
So the old one,
Is with
the
the-
chin is the nose, right?
The neck.
The neck is the
Oh, I
nose.
see, now I see it, okay.
So the neck of the young woman is the nose of the old woman.
Now I see.
I mean, if you had to choose which one to see, you'd prefer to see the pretty young one, right?
And the old one. The mouth.
I see it now.
Wow.
So what does it mean if
Oh,
we
that's
saw the
very
old
unusual.
first?
No, it's not that it means anything that
Oh, well, you
you
always
saw.
have
But, well,
I thought
if
you
you
had-
really want me to go into my own thing,
Well, I thought that you would, so.
I see her.
Sometimes it takes just shifting a little bit so we can see the perspective from another viewpoint. Okay? And sometimes it's so hard because it's so hard to get out of our own head. We can't get out of our own way because we're so conditioned by what we've been taught and what we, that's what it is, and that there's no other viewpoint. And what about the 3-4? That was a little easier.
That one's
because-
cool. I like
Yeah.
that one.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
That is really
Where does your
cool.
natural eye go?
I see 4, naturally.
Me too.
But then
Well,
when you
that's
look at it,
Well,
at the top, you see the 3.
That's
So it's
what
like-
it looks like. If I look at this guy with
Yeah,
the 4, I see the 4. If I look
yeah.
at the guy with the 3, I see
So who's wrong?
No.
Neither one is wrong, but it's depending on the perspective. And maybe if they switch seats, or if they stood at a different angle, then they could see the other person's perspective. I mean, obviously the little graphic is to show that they're fighting, but that's
when
what we
you do
do.
this, you only see 3. Now you see 4 too. Oh, interesting.
Now, what about the circles?
What about me?
Now I'm like,
I love optical illusions.
So Erica's in her meditation there, being like taken away with her movement.
I just saw the flower black.
Do you see them moving?
Yeah.
Stare at the dots.
They're moving. I don't see what you're saying.
Look at them moving. They move like little, like a,
Yeah,
like a clock.
Yeah.
Now, are they really moving?
No.
We know that it's on a piece of paper, okay? So each parts of what we just did, when we get back from break, we'll start looking at the parts of the mind, and you're using all different parts of the mind to understand these things. Now, this is a simple piece of paper. We understand it. Just question yourself, how can you translate this and take this into your life? To see a situation from a different perspective, if you're for Trump wanting Hillary, or if you're for Hillary wanting Trump, an example, in any situation. Like, I cannot stand rye bread. So when my kid wants me to buy rye bread, okay, let me put it from his perspective. I mean, simple things. Our lives would be so much easier. You don't like it either?
I love rye bread.
Okay.
I feel like eating. Nobody likes rye bread in my house.
So it's like, if I can understand, and it doesn't become a thing, like, oh my God, I have to buy rye bread. Oh my God. Because we get, like, the little kids that we are. Oh my God, I have to spend $6 on rye bread. And we look at these silly little things, but if we're doing it in the little areas, we are doing it in the big, important areas. There's a saying in my field, if you do it in one area, you're doing it in every area. So if you are one way with your tool, that I don't want to commit because I don't want to be wrong, or it's multitasking queen, we're showing how the person acts in every area of their life. It isn't just because a 9 made me start cooking. Damn it, So we could see there, if we do it in one area of our life, we do it in every area of our life. We're really not as complex as we pretend to be. Our wardrobe is more complex than we are. just really simple beings. So if we look at these simple activities and we see how difficult, no, but I can't see the old woman. What do you mean? There's a young woman there? Like, that's how we extrapolate that to everything. So we really, really want to be vigilant of these little things because then they give us insight to the bigger. The bigger seems much more complex because we're usually so emotionally involved that it's hard, and the layers and the layers and the layers. But really it's in these simple activities that we can start to see, wow, the mind part of my triad is a little weak. So that we can change and we can be honest with ourselves and live in our truth. So let's break for 10 minutes and we will
No. They're from Swiss.